Thank you guys so much for asking so many questions in my one of my most recent videos about shop layout and efficiency, and specifically with having a shop business, a woodworking business in your garage. So many people ask so many questions. I figured I would respond with a video like this, going through the questions. Now there were tons of comments, but I picked out some of the questions, and hopefully I'll answer these questions so that everybody can kind of see the answer. They're really important questions, and I really appreciate you guys asking these questions and making comments, because it really helps me understand what I should bring up in the next video. As I was saying before, this is a series, so this is going to continue on, and I think it's really helpful for people that are wanting to start businesses, or maybe they've got them already, and or if you've had a career and you're wanting to retire from that career and start a new career. So this is one of those things where I think this is a very valuable opportunity to learn. And so I appreciate the questions. As Mr. Clean wrote, he wanted to know about organization and plan of production, as well as the pricing of jobs. So as you price jobs, as you start this business, what you're going to find is there's going to be many people out there that are going to be bidding for the same jobs, especially when you first start. So if I go to a meeting right now, I might have, the customers say they've got, 5 other people that they've talked to that are going to give bids. I might be the first one, I might be the last one, but at the end of the day, there's going to be multiple prices that are going to be given. And you're going to find out really quickly if your prices are good or bad, because if your prices are really, really good, meaning that you're getting every job and everybody's saying, I want to do work with you, there could be a couple of reasons for that. Your price could be so low that it's like, wow, because most people are like, I want to just, I want to save the money and I want to use this guy. If you're pricing a job so low, you may not be able to complete the job and make money doing it. And that's going to be the scary part, because there's going to be times when you're going to be doing a job, and if you priced it at a point where it was really low just to get the job, you're going to be scrambling to make money on it, and you're going to lose money at the end of the day. And that's really tough. You can never go back, in my experience, you can't go back to a customer and say you need more money for a job, you underbid it. That is just not acceptable. So if you want to maintain good relationships with people, don't go asking for more money. There are going to be times when I think it's going to be okay to ask for more money, and that is especially when the customer changes the job, when the scope of the job changes, right? So if there's a change order, and I use the term change order very loosely, because if a customer says they want to go ahead and add 2 doors instead of make 1 wider door, that's a change order, and it's going to cost a little bit more money, but it's not something that I'm going to write up this huge contract for. I'm just going to note it in an email or a text that they want to change that, and I'm going to make a note on the price, and I'll give them the updated estimate for that price. And that's basically it. However, if it's a really big order, like a really big change in a job, then that's definitely something you want to make sure that you write down very specifically in an email and submit it to them, because you want to make sure that it's very clear if it's a really big change. For instance, if you're going from, maybe you're making you're starting a job, and maybe it's a mantle, right? A small mantle you're doing, but now it's a mantle, but it's also cabinets to the side, so that the scope of the job has changed. So of course that's going to change your pricing on that job, and you want to make sure that you change the verbiage in your your written declaration of what you're doing for the customer. So whether it's a contract per se, or if it's just an email to the customer about what the scope of the job is, you want to make sure that you change it completely. But if there aren't any changes to the job, the only difference to the job is that you didn't realize it was going to be so much work. You can't change the price on the customer. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's just not something you should do. Um, so once you realize your pricing, if you're getting too many jobs, go back to that. You might want to increase the pricing and get to the point where you're not getting every job. If you get every job, your prices are too low. If you don't get any jobs, your prices are too high, and or you just don't have enough experience to get those jobs. It could be that your prices are coming in line with everybody else, but the customer, maybe they just didn't like your presentation to them. Maybe they just didn't like your ideas. Maybe they just didn't like something about you. Maybe you showed up late to meetings. I mean, there's other things that could cause a customer to not want to use you. But at the end of the day, if you feel like your presentations are good and you're not getting you're not getting callbacks, you're not getting jobs, it's fair to ask a customer, why didn't you select me for the job? Say you're really interested because you want to improve your job closure rate. If you don't get any jobs, it's going to be tough to have a business. So you want to ask those customers that didn't choose you. I know it's awkward, but sometimes it's awkward for the customer. But if you just ask in a nice way, say, would you mind me asking? I don't want to offend you. I just want to know what it is that you liked about some other company versus mine, and you chose them instead of me. Was it based on price? Was it based on my ideas? Did we just not vibe together? These are all valid things that you should always be thinking. And you can definitely ask people this. They're going to tell you. That's kind of an idea on pricing. And if you have anything else that you want to ask me, just please, just put it in the comments and let me know. Now, the plan of production is very important because as you start a job in this field, you want to, in my opinion, I don't like to work on a bunch of jobs at the same time. So when I plan for a job and I go ahead and I figure out what I need to do for it, the first thing I do is I figure out, I sketch out the job. I do a shop drawing for myself. And if I need to show the customer, I will. Sometimes customers want to see those, but sometimes they don't care. They just trust me. They want to let me do it based on our previous discussions and a photograph I've given them, or maybe I've rough sketched it for them. They don't necessarily need to know every dimension. I would say 99% of the time, they don't need to know. They don't want to know. They just see the rough sketch that I have given them and they're good with it. Or they've seen a photograph of one that they want and I say, look, it's going to look just like this. So people get to a point where they're really comfortable with you. You don't need to provide them with a bunch of different drawings. Once you get that done and you've got a cut list ready, then I follow my cut list, right? I start with all my, the ripping and cross cutting, just like I said in my video. I basically show the whole thing. So you kind of just do it that way. Start with all that, your joinery, right? Everything starts, it's kind of the same for every job. So as you do this, you're just gonna want to kind of get to that point where you're comfortable with it so that you can be efficient, but also it's kind of a system that you've developed. And sometimes it's nice to batch cut things. So if you've got other jobs that you want to work on too, if you've got a big enough space, it's okay to work on a couple jobs at a time. But if in a small shop, it's definitely not wise, in my opinion, to do too much at once because things can get a little bit difficult. Storing of items can get difficult. So you want to make sure that you've got enough room around you in order to store stuff. So generally, if the job is the exact same, and I need to do 2 jobs that are the exact same, I can do 2 jobs at one time, but that's pretty rare. That's only happened a couple of times, but normally jobs are completely custom and they're one-off, so nothing is the same from the next job. So I focus on one job at a time, and that allows me to get my mind around that one job. Now, if you are the type of person that likes to start a job and then before it's done, start working on another job, that's sometimes I'll do that too. It just really depends on the size of the job, right? If it's a really big job and there's not a lot of room in the shop, I just won't even touch another job until everything is cleared out and done. But it is there can be a good feeling about starting a job, and then when you're about ready to finish it, have another one ready to go, meaning the cut list is all ready to go and everything is, you're right there, you're ready to go, and maybe you've even started ripping some stuff, because at that point when you start that other job finishes up, you can then jump right into the next job. So that's really key. If you want to just be cranking around the clock, that's the best way to do it, so there's no lag in there. Because if you don't have that shop drawing and cut list ready for the next job, it can delay the process. Moving on, Route 24 Design. By the way, I love some of these names. I mean, Mr. Clean, Route 24 Design. Route 24 Design asked about licensing, because he's in the New York area and he's concerned about licensing. Well, I will tell you that every state's going to be so different. Not one state is going to be the same. So in California, you have to have a license if you are working on jobs that are over $500. $500 is like nothing, right? So you pretty much need to have a contractor's license to do any work in California, unless you're working for somebody else's contractor's license. You want to make sure that you understand all your state requirements. Go to the state contractors license board and or the local government website, and find out if there's any special requirements for your particular locations, because even within states there's different locations that are going to have different requirements potentially. So you might find that your state doesn't require a contractor's license to work, but your location, meaning that like the city you live in, could actually have a requirement that you register with, somebody for something, right? Some revenue producing thing. I hate to say it, but some locations are just going to want money. Some places require it only if there's a permit involved. Some places require it only if it's residential and not commercial. Some places require it in a certain zone, like Florida, for instance. In certain areas of Florida, you need a license, but you don't in some other areas. And then some will require licenses only good in certain areas, meaning perhaps you are a C license in the state of Florida. I'm just using this as an example. That C license may not be good enough in a certain area of Florida because perhaps there's more hurricanes in a different area of Florida. I don't know. I'm just speculating that that's one of the reasons why they require the contractors to be certified at a certain level in different areas. I have a feeling that's what it is, the hurricanes. And California, it's basically 3 different types of contractor's license that you can get, 3 different levels of them. So you can get an engineering license, which is a Class A. I guess that's essentially a big scale contractor. Class B is a general contractor. Okay, that's a building contractor, a general construction contractor. Then a Class C contractor is which is what I am, a Class C, and that's a specialized area. So if you do anything specialized like cabinetry and millwork, framing, which is weird, framing's part of it, I don't know why, but we are able to do all sorts of, cabinetry and millwork, framing, and that's it. We can't venture out into electrical. We can't venture out into plumbing. We can do certain other things, but really that's where we want to stay focused on. So if somebody calls me and says, I want you to do this for me, even though I might be able to do it, I'm not allowed to do it. My license isn't for that. So if you're wanting to have the ability to do multiple tasks on a job, like for instance, plumbing or electrical, then I would recommend you get a general Class B license, right? And this is California, of course. So if you're wondering what's the best one for you to get, what I would recommend is just go to the state license board and check out all the states, state requirements for your particular state. Chris Zarnopoulos, I hope I pronounced that right. This actually is a great question, and actually it comes up quite often, so I'm glad that he asked this. Now, he wonders, when do I paint or when do I stain the work that I do? Great question. So when you see me and you see all the jobs I put in, you realize that none of them are finished. There's no paint on them and there's no stain on them. And that's because what I do is I contract a company to do all my finishing for me. Rather than me having to do it, it's so much better. Here's why. I used to do it when I started out. I used to do everything, right? I painted in the shop, or I set a spray booth out on the side, and it was great. I lacquered everything. But then what I realized was that, one, the painting before I put in was a good way to start my business, and it allowed me to learn how to do that. But the problem is that when I became busier, and when I became more anal about my work that I was doing, I started to realize that doing a job like that, where I put it in pre-finished, wasn't the right way to do it for me. I didn't like that. I don't like the end result. So the best way for me to do it is to have it painted on site. And that means that the job goes in raw and it gets painted on site. And now there's so many benefits to that, right? I don't have to worry about transportation. I don't have to worry about scratching stuff as much. I don't have to worry about filling the nail holes and touching it up. Spray lacquer is not something you just want to take lightly and think you can just touch this stuff up, with a paintbrush and dab it. It doesn't look the same. Caulking after it's painted, again, all this stuff isn't as good as doing it before. Doing it that way is not the best way to get the best result. I prefer to do it with everything installed, unfinished. The painters come in, they seal off the entire area, and I mean, it's very, very nice. And the next time that a job is finished, I'm actually going to have, I'm going to video it so you guys can see the process. But these are artists that are working, right? This is a very tough thing to do. Go into a home, seal off the cabinet, make sure there's no overspray anywhere, and get a phenomenal finish is very difficult. If you haven't done it, you probably don't understand how difficult it is. But if you have done it, or you've tried to do it and your results were less than good, you know what I'm talking about. So leaving it to this particular company that I use. Now, these guys, this is maybe the fourth company that I've used in my career, and I've been using them for the last 14 years. So they're pretty much, spot on with every job. Occasionally I find something that maybe needs to be touched up, but they're pretty darn good. This last job I just went into, I noticed there were a couple things I wasn't happy about, so I'm going to talk to them about it and see what they can do and go back and touch it up. But it's a testament to the quality of work that I want to put out when the finished job is really good, because that's all got my name on it. So when a customer wants me to build the job for them and they don't want me to finish it, or my referral to finish it, then this can be an issue for me, because I don't want just anybody painting the cabinets or staining them, because I know what's out there. A lot of times it's not very good. So sometimes I've gone to jobs where the customer has chosen to save a little bit of money by having somebody else paint the job. And I get there and I realize that it was not done well at all. And it's just really tough to look at a job that I just put in and have it be, just awful. It's tough. So I prefer to have my, painters do everything, and they're finishers, right? They do everything. But they won't paint walls and none of that stuff. It's just cabinetry stuff. Chris, thanks for that question. Clement's Carpentry. he appreciated the video, and he also found it really interesting, the torsion boxes. I think I mentioned that before in the video about how it's unusual that I don't see anybody using these in their shop for bases, to build their cabinets on. So platforms, such, very interesting. And he really liked that idea, and he wanted to know if I had any videos on building them. And unfortunately, I don't have a video on building them, but I was actually thinking about building one just to show you. And it actually occurred to me that one of my videos from a long time ago, not a long time ago, I wasn't doing this a long time ago, but a video from a previous job, floating shelves. Look at that, because the construction of a floating shelf is very similar to a torsion box. So if you want to know kind of how, it kind of goes together, just check that, how to build floating shelves, because it's extremely simple. The only thing is you got to make sure that it's flat as you're building it. That's the one tough thing about it. So if you don't have any workspace, right? Because maybe you're building this for a countertop too, a workbench, not just a platform, but you don't really have anything right now, it can be difficult to build a flat torsion box. Building a torsion box isn't difficult. It's building a flat one that's difficult, especially when you want them for platforms or a workbench. So what I do recommend is using the workbench you have, and then taking ripped pieces and make sure they're dead straight. You're going to need really straight pieces to reference the bottom of a torsion box on, and then you'll start gluing up the grid. So the difference between a floating shelf and a torsion box, the way I build them, is that I put grids going both directions, not just lengthwise, but I actually put them going side to side as well. They're like small squares in the box. So that really helps keep things stable and flat. And over time, when you have that glued, I mean, it is extremely strong. They don't deflect at all. They're awesome. So that would be my suggestion if you want to know kind of the idea about building them. However, I have feet on mine as well. So, I mean, there's more things involved than just building it, but leveling feet are critical, and they're hinged as well, so you can hinge up. But let me know in the comments if you want me to build a torsion box platform, and I'd be happy to. This will be awesome. Thank you, Clements Carpentry, for that. I appreciate it. Okay, Guy Bowers wrote, he saw the Delta jointer and actually wondered if I had everything to do over again, would I buy that Delta jointer again? And actually, yes, Guy, I would, absolutely. And the fact that it's got the helical head on it, the Beard Shieldix head, I mean, it is a phenomenal jointer. It's a parallelogram DJ20, and if you haven't seen my video on the jointer, why I love it so much, just try that, check that video out, because it is something that I use daily and it's really good. I wouldn't buy a different one. So if you're wondering, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, just buy whatever you can afford. If you feel like you want a 6-inch, maybe your shop space limited, buy that. But in my opinion, for my business, my 8-inch is perfect. If I was doing a ton of resawing and I needed to flatten wide boards, then I would maybe try to find something wider like a 14-inch. But that's big money. So the 8-inch is a really good size, and I think that's a great place for. I know it's a step up from the 6 as far as prices go, but it definitely is a nice size jointer. I did use a 6-inch for quite a while though. Okay, so Will Lee or Lay wanted to know, how many jobs can I do in a month working out of the garage? This is really interesting. My response to him was that it depends on the size of the job, of course, and it depends on how hard you want to work. You can go from, let's say, 7 in the morning until, I mean, you could go as late as you want, right? If your neighbors aren't a problem, or if you have a lot of space between your homes, the sound isn't an issue, you could work really late, midnight. It doesn't, especially if you don't have a bunch of people in your home trying to sleep, there's not going to be a limit really, except for your energy level. I find that starting work at 8 and stopping at about 5. That's my time frame that I work. Now, I stop at 5. I have my meetings in the evening time. Generally, I try to keep my meetings in the evening time or early morning. I try to keep the daytime open for working. Now, if I'm going to be out getting a material, having a material run, I can go to meetings if I'm in the area of where I get my material, right? So that's just kind of being efficient. So if I know I'm going to be going to, let's say, a place that's 30 minutes away to get material, on my way back, I'm going to hit an appointment that might be on the way back. But normally speaking, I try to keep all my meetings in the evening and or the morning time before I start working. Once you start going in the daytime for meetings, it'll really slow the progress of your work down. So it's tough, but some people, they can't meet at any times other than the middle of the day, and that's okay. You accommodate it, you make it work. But just understand that you want to when you get to those meetings, if they're in the middle of the day, just focus on doing the meeting and getting back into work. Don't go and do a bunch of other stuff while you're out and about. It's very easy to do that. So how many jobs in a month? Well, it's really going to be dependent on how long you want to work. So I guess in my business, the way I like to think of it as, if I'm working enough to do 1 to 2 jobs a week, small jobs, right? That's really good. But normally, if it's a big like wall unit that takes a week to build, or maybe a little bit more, it could take a week and a half to build it, and then it's going to take another couple of days to install. That's another thing. Installation time can be quite high on big jobs. So if it's got a lot of intricate detail in the job, the installation does. But generally speaking, 1 to maybe 2 a week would be kind of the normal. Unless it's like a mantle. Mantles can be done in maybe a day or 2 days, but that again depends on the style of them. So you can kind of crank those out. And I've done mantles depending on the style. I've done half a day. I built a mantle, and then go install it that same day. So one day it's built and installed. Now, if it's a kitchen, that's just my experience. Kitchens take quite a bit longer to do. So if I build a kitchen, a smaller kitchen, probably it'll take 2 weeks to build it, and then maybe 4 days to install. So you have to weigh the pros and cons on kitchen jobs. For some people that do this type of work, that's all they want to do are kitchens. And there can be big money in kitchens, but there's also a big headache also. If you really enjoy doing kitchens, then I'm sure that you're great at it, and you could probably do quite a few of them in a month. But I love to do all types of jobs, wall units especially, and I find those to be better for me because I can get them in and out quicker, and then I move on to the next job versus working on one job for a few weeks, including installation, and or a month or more on the big kitchens. I mean, you could be working on them for quite a while. So there's so many things involved with doing a kitchen as well. You have a lot of components, a lot of parts that you have to store, and then ultimately you have to move those to the job site. You have different trades that you have to deal with, the plumbers, the solid surface countertop people. You have electricians possibly for electrical work. You have general contractors that might be needing to move walls and whatnot. You have the designers. A lot of times there's designers on kitchens that will get in the way of progress because they'll change their minds halfway through jobs, and you'll have to change up what you've done. So at a certain point, there are certain kitchens that I just decline doing. Um, Generally, if they're working with a designer and there's a general contractor involved, most of the time it's kind of a larger kitchen, and I'm going to have to gauge it. The location of the job is going to be really important to me. How far is it from my shop? Is it too far for me to be happy with this job? Like if it's over 30 minutes or 45 minutes to the job site one way, and with traffic it could be more. That's tough on you, because if you have to come back to the shop to do something, or if you have to go there for something that the customer wants to ask you a question about, I that's just a lot of driving. And with the traffic the way that it is, so I try to stay local. I try to stay within my 20-minute range, 25-minute range for every job I do. And so that's going to be another issue, is if the job is close to you, I will be more likely to take it. But at the same time, if it's far away, I just probably will pass on the job. I mean, if it's about an hour away, I most likely will pass on it. I don't care what kind of job it is. It doesn't really matter to me. And some people don't mind driving, and that's cool too. And some people don't mind being in different locations for working. But I find that also when you go to different locations that you're not necessarily used to, they could have parking in situations, right? Maybe subterranean parking. It's tough to, get trucks and trailers into certain areas. So if you have parking like in city areas, it can be really difficult. Maybe they have freight elevators that have rules as far as when you can go up, when you can go down. Some places in like Beverly Hills and Westwood, really nice Santa Monica, Pacific Palisades, all the Malibu, all these places that are really expensive are a pain to work in. They're a pain to get to. They're a pain to do anything with. I just stay away from it. I don't want any part of it. I don't want it. And it's just logistical nightmare, right? It's a logistical nightmare. I don't want any part of it. So I, politely decline the job. Matt Bowers wants to know, so he wants to retire from his current career, and he wants to get into building wood, cabinetry or woodwork for people, which is really cool. It's a great idea. Now, finding work could be an issue, especially if you're just starting out. And I can see why, someone would be a little nervous about that, because if you don't find work, how are you going to do it? So I think that if you're going to retire from a job like I actually did, I retired from the career of being a financial advisor when I took this on full time, completely 100%. I was, I had a career as a financial advisor, and, it was great. It gave me the ability to start real early, right? Because the stock market opens real early. Here, it's open at 6:30. So the day starts early, but it ends early. So at 1:30, 1 o'clock, you're kind of on your own. You could do whatever you want to. And my company, you had full autonomy. You could do whatever you wanted. So at about 2 o'clock, I would pretty much leave and then start my second job, which is cabinetry. So I'd go back home, work in my shop for a few hours, and then build, work. So I was kind of doing two jobs. But then what happened was the work started getting so much that I decided to take the plunge and just go at it full time. So if you're wanting to start from scratch, right? Cut your old job cold, move into a new job without any, without any referral sources or without any name recognition, you have nothing, that's going to be difficult. So I would recommend start at it before you retire. Just put your name out there as someone who wants to do this type of work in your community or your friends. Maybe they want you to build something. Put an ad in the local paper or the magazine. That's probably the best thing you can do. And then see how it progresses. Try to get jobs that way before you have no job, right? You want to keep your other job and then, work on the weekends or whatever, whenever you have time. And then just pick and choose the jobs you want to do when you start that, because you're not going to have time to do a lot of stuff. You're going to have time to do a little bit, but you'll get your feet wet, and then you'll be able to decide whether or not you want to do this, right? Because maybe you don't want to do it. After you do a few jobs, you might be like, I don't want to do this. This is not for me. Perhaps. I can't possibly see that being the case with this type of work, as I love it, but some people may not love it. And you have to, that could be a possibility. So don't quit your day job, right? That's the old adage. Don't quit your day job when you want to transition into something new. You want to transition to something new while you still have your day job to fall back on. But then after that something new comes and it's really good and you love it and you feel like you can be successful at it, at that point, boom, you're done. Sever the other one, retire from it, whatever, and then bang, now you've got this. SCBM Studio is getting ready to start his first big cabinet job. I hope it's a he. It could be a she. His or her cabinet job, and wanted to know what materials they should be using for cabinets. Cabinet doors, drawers, etc. This is obviously, this can be daunting if you go to the lumber yard or if you go to the box store. There's a whole bunch of materials you could use, right? You could use melamine, you could use plywood. What type of plywood? Even what type of melamine, right? There's different levels of melamine. What thickness of wood should you use? Should you use 5/8 melamine, 1/2 inch melamine, 3/4 melamine? And if you think you're going to build cabinets and you think, oh, I'm just going to, go to my lumber yard or go to Home Depot or Lowe's or something and get material to build a job, and think that it's all going to be the same, it isn't going to be the same. So when you go to the box store, there's going to be a couple differences. One is it's going to be price and it's going to be quality and or availability as well. Your options are going to be very limited at a box store. So I would encourage anybody who wants to do any kind of trim work, cabinetry work, woodwork, to go to their box store and just take pictures of their selection. Look at their moldings, look at the prices for their molding, look at their hardwood selection, look at the price for their hardwood selection, and look at the selection of their plywood, and again, look at the pricing and where it comes from. If you notice, there's going to be a similarity with all the box stores around here anyways, is that the price for the materials is extremely high. So if you go, let's say you were going to do a house full of trim and you were, I'm going to do a whole bunch of molding and I want to go to Home Depot and I want to buy the molding because that's the only place I know of that sells it. You're going to go in there and the molding selection is pretty decent, right? There's quite a few choices, but maybe not in the specific type you want. So maybe you want a 6-inch crown. Well, maybe they only have 2 choices for that. So that's going to be limited, but there's going to be, 6-inch, there's going to be a 4-inch, there's going to be a 3-inch. So you're going to have size choices, but not that many choices for each size. What you're going to find is that the quality of the molding is going to be not so good. There's going to be defects in it, and don't just grab it and take it to the check stand and check out. You seriously want to look at the molding, because when you look at it, take it down. These are 16-foot long pieces, right? Most of the time. Look to make sure and feel it. Make sure it's smooth. Don't just assume that it's good. A lot of times there'll be defects in the molding, and when you get it into your home or your job site, you install it. Oh my God, it could be bad. So check to make sure that the molding is really, really good and perfect, essentially. You don't want to buy molding that's not perfect, because you're paying the perfect price. You might as well get it. I mean, seriously, when you pay the price that they charge for molding, that stuff should be putting itself up. But instead of looking at the box store for this kind of stuff, maybe what you want to do is find a good lumber yard by you, a good plywood supplier. We have lots of plywood suppliers in the area. I have to drive, a half hour to 45 minutes to get them though, but we have some great ones. So you want to go to those suppliers and find out, will they work with you if you don't have a contractor's license? Some won't. Some only want to work with contractors. Some are open to the public. They'll work with anybody. They may give you a contractor price if you have a license, but if not, they may not. But it's not going to hurt you to ask. Just call them and ask. But also you want to find out what selections of woods. Can you pick out your own hardwood? Probably one of the biggest things that I get completely turned off by is not being able to pick out my own hardwood. If you go into the store and you buy, like Home Depot, if you go into the Home Depot and you buy, let's say, some poplar or some cherry, if your store has cherry or oak or maple, even some have walnut, crazy, mahogany. If you went there to pick it out, you're able to select it, right? So you can hand pick every piece. If you go into a lumber yard, there are many lumber yards that will not let you hand pick it. They don't want to deal with you messing up the bunch, right? The pallet of wood. They don't want you looking through it because, right, they know what you're going to do. You're going to pick off all the junk and you're going to put it to the side. It's going to be a mess. They don't want to deal with it. So they say, no, we will bring it out to you. We'll load it on your truck. Well, they're just going to take the top pieces and give you what's there. So you could get warped pieces, you could get twisted pieces. The color of each piece could be completely different. It is just absolutely the worst thing to do is pick out lumber without being able to pick the pieces. So find a good lumber yard that allows you to pick out the stuff. And find a good lumber yard that also gives you the ability to, if they bring out a load, let's say of plywood, that if there's really cool, drivers, forklift drivers, and they bring out a load to me and I say, look, these things, they look like they were at the bottom of the barrel. These don't look very good. What can we do about this? Can we, switch this out? Most of the time, no problem. And oftentimes what they'll do is they'll say, you know what, I'm just going to bring out the whole pallet because we can look at each piece as we put it in the truck, right? So each piece of plywood, it's going to be a little different, right? The look of it, and also the flatness of it. We can actually take each piece out and look at it. So if you're buying, let's say 15, 20, 30 sheets, you want to make sure that you're getting the best stuff because you're paying for it. Even if it's the worst piece in the stack, you're paying the same price. So you might as well get the best stuff. And the people know that. The forklift operators, for the most part, they totally get it and they're willing to work with you. Now, I get it. If you keep saying, oh, I don't like this one, go back, I don't like this one, it's going to get annoying and they're going to get tired of you. But at the same time, they've got a bad supply possibly, which is something that you want to alert them about. Maybe they just got a bad batch. Who knows? It happens. But don't be afraid to ask them to bring out another stack if you don't like this one. But with plywood, a lot of times you can go back as well and look at that plywood before they bring it out just to make sure that's the stuff you want. Because there's so many different types of plywood, right? Their quality is going to be different for each one. And the special type of plywood that I like to use for my cabinets and the special type of MDF that I like to use for my cabinets, you've seen it in my videos. All this stuff is really important to make sure that you find a supplier that's got what you like. Now, as far as the selection for the cabinets, for generally speaking, paint grade cabinets that aren't in a wet area, I like to use ultralight MDF and not plywood. Because if I'm painting it, plywood to me doesn't paint it well. So unless it's an absolutely perfect piece of plywood that's absolutely perfectly smooth, it's pretty rare to see that. I don't want to work with plywood unless it's in a kitchen or a bathroom. And then I will be using my top grade veneer core plywood that I use, whatever species of wood that I like. I kind of like maple with a clear finish on it from the factory, but sometimes, occasionally, we'll use something different for that interior, but normally it's just a color selection, right? Maybe it's a dark color, but it's still got the UV protection from the factory. So maybe it's walnut, perhaps. We're going with a dark interior with a painted face. So if they want like a two-tone effect, that's cool too. But either way, I don't use melamine. So pretty much no melamine unless it's a rehab on a kitchen that needs it to match everything else. Generally speaking, I stay away from melamine. Now, drawer box material, if you're going to make your own drawer boxes, pretty much you got to find really good material. This can be an issue. There's not a lot of good choices out there for good drawer box material. There's a lot of pieces that are curved and warped and twisted. You can't use those for drawer boxes. In my experience, any type of a rack or a twist in a piece of wood is going to cause the drawer box to be a little bit cockeyed. So when you put it in, it's not going to be sitting nicely. That's the worst situation to get into. You build a drawer and it's great. You dovetailed everything. It's beautiful. And then you realize the piece is twisted and so it doesn't sit flat on the table. Well, if it's not going to sit flat on the table, it's not going to sit flat on the slides. So it becomes a real nightmare. And especially if you're using undermount slides, which I do, it sits on top of those. Side mount slides can sometimes help with the twisted drawer box, but I don't use those. But I do know they will help a little bit. However, if you have warps, they can also really hurt you if you're using side mount slides, because the warp is going to cause the drawer to bind. So when you size drawers, they have to be really sized well. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem operating the drawers. Baltic birch is also another option for drawer box material. Plywood, if you're going to do like let's say a file cabinet or something, and your customer wants to save a little bit of money, I give an option for plywood, Baltic birch plywood, 5/8 thick for drawer box material. For any other cabinet in the home, like let's say it's for a bathroom, generally I wouldn't use that, but if the customer opts for it or if there's something special about it, I will use Baltic birch. But normally I just go for solid wood for my kitchens or for pretty much anything else. I just go with solid wood. But for like entertainment centers, wall units, maybe there's a couple drawers and the customer just doesn't really care about the interior of the drawer. They just care about the dollar. We'll go with Baltic birch. But if there's not an issue with the pricing, then I always use solid wood. I just prefer the look and the quality of it. But Baltic birch is a great option as well. The door materials for cabinets, if it's not wet area and it's going to be a paint grade, I love to use MDF for my doors. MDF doesn't split out the lacquer, and this is a really critical issue. If you've seen lacquer in the panels, a lot of times the lacquer will crack. And so if you have doors that you're making and let's say you've got solid panels, most likely it's going to crack if you paint it and caulk the edges and get it nice and perfect. You're going to have so many issues with that door. It's better that you don't use solid wood on the panels. If you're going to use solid wood frames, that's okay too. But normally I don't if it's a non-wet area, just for stability purposes. But again, if the job is, let's say, in a bathroom or a kitchen, you have to use a solid frame door. In that situation, I feel like it's best for the finish. But an MDF panel, again, paint grade. If it's stain grade, obviously you're going to use not a MDF panel. You're going to use either a solid wood or a veneer core plywood panel. Solid's probably going to be the better choice, but if you want to save a little bit of money, a plywood panel will work great too. So again, it's all about the customer and what they want. How much do they want to spend? Do they feel like one benefit is going to outweigh another, perhaps with solid wood versus a plywood. So just work with the customer, show them examples of those two, and then see what they like. But yeah, there's just so many choices out there as to how to make your doors, and whether or not you should even buy the doors. Maybe you should buy them and not make them. So for kitchens, normally I'll be buying the doors because there's just too many doors to make, and I know I get them really well made, and honestly, they're going to be able to make them and supply them to me so quick that it really makes it worth my time. Whiskey and Wax wonders how he can keep his material from warping, and how you can keep your material from warping. One of the great questions, right? We all have this question. The question is, what material are you using? Is it a plywood? Is the plywood warped? If the plywood is warped, it's pretty much not going to straighten out. That's all I can say. If it's already warped, it's not straightening out. If you cut it and it warps after you cut it, you're not straightening this stuff out. I don't care what you do to it. You could put, weights on it forever. It will not straighten out. The glue is going to recover, and eventually, even if it's flattened out for a little bit, eventually it's going to come back and spring up to its normal shape. So if you have a workpiece that you're working on, let's say you're ripping sheets and it starts to bow to a point where you don't like it, a bow where it goes where it curves like this, up or down, you can kind of work with those. But if it's warped and twisted, meaning that it's high on one edge and it's low on the other edge, so when you put it down and it kind of rocks, that's called a twist. And that is the worst thing to be doing with a cabinet, building a cabinet out of twisted wood. You can do it if you're building a frame, like a cabinet box. It's potentially possible to have a good box done with a twisted piece of plywood. But you're going to have a really tough time if you're using that twisted wood to make drawers and or doors for sure. You can't even make doors out of it, right? So if you're doing plywood doors, let's say for your shop, and the board's twisted, unless you put hooks to lock the door in, you're pretty much not going to be using those to make your doors. It's going to be awful to work with. Shelves, again, the same thing goes. Unless you're putting tons of weight on them, they're just not going to flatten out. So probably not the best thing if they're twisted. So really, if it's a twisted piece, I would say try to take it back to where you bought it. A lot of places will actually accept it. Even the box stores. I mean, if you take the pieces and say this stuff warped up so badly, I can't use it, they're gonna take it back. If you take it to a lumber yard and say, I was cutting this stuff up, my suppliers, everybody will give you a new piece, but they won't give it to you if it's an imported piece, right? If it's an imported panel and it's warped, there's no warranty on an imported piece. It's only if it's a domestic piece. Keep that in mind. Ask your supplier, do you have a warranty on this wood if it warps? And see what they say. It's actually very interesting to know that, because when I first started, I didn't know that. I had no idea, and I just thought, I have to use it. I have to suck up the $100 a sheet or $110 a sheet, whatever the material cost was. I just remember thinking to myself, man, this stuff is crazy. It's so expensive. I had no idea that the place would allow me to return it and get a new one. But yeah, a lot of the lumber yards will do that if it's not an imported piece. But the box stores, if you're getting some stuff there, for sure they're gonna. Okay, so that's kind of a rundown of all the questions that I was asked, and I wanted to put it out there, answer these questions, and again, say thank you so much for all those that wrote and commented on that shop efficiency video, and I hope that this video is going to really help you again. And I'm going to continue putting out content based around this. I'm going to have content that's going to be for the different types of, shop situations. I feel like my shop is a great situation for me, But what if it was a 2-car garage? How would I change my mindset? How would I do things differently? Because I would do things differently. And if, let's say, it was a 3-car wide versus a 2-car with a tandem, how would I utilize that to my advantage versus having the tandem? Because there are things that are going to be so different. But I want to tackle that and logistics, as far as working in those environments, what you have to do in order to, make the space work for you. And even if you have a 1-car garage, I mean, that's a pretty tight space to have a shop where you're actually building, cabinets. But definitely can be done if you have mobile bases and you want to, maybe take your work outside. But I'll talk about those in my next video. And if you want to ask anything else, just please ask it in the comments and let me know what you want me to talk about in the next video. And I will be happy to do it. Whatever if you want me to go deeper on marketing, how to look for jobs, what do I look for when I go to a job? That was another topic that I wanted to discuss in the next video. As far as when I go to a job site, the very first thing I do when I measure, like how do I measure for a job, right? What do I take into consideration? Are there adjacent walls that I need to think about? Are there vents in the ceiling? Are there speakers in the ceiling? Are there lights anywhere? Are there outlets? What do I look at when I do a job measurement? And, when I bid a job as well, what factors do I look at? Different variations of jobs are going to require different, set of building standards for me. So if I'm building in an upstairs area versus a downstairs, I build it differently. If I have to connect cabinets in such a way in order to get up staircases, I will show you some video footage right now of working with a situation where it was upstairs and we had to take these huge cabinets up there. So it was only possible because I was able to build them narrower than normal. The customers wanted narrow cabinets, and so that allowed me to build them the way I did. So we were able to get them upstairs, but it was very difficult. But I also take, my tape measure and I measure out the different parts of the home. So I make sure that the space is going to be big enough. So these are all things I'll talk about next video. But if you want to hear anything else, just let me know. And I just love the interaction and I appreciate it so much. And also a side note, the channel here just went over 1,000 subscribers just recently, just a few days ago. And I am super excited because, I mean, to me, it's a big step. It's not like, I'm still a very small channel, but the word is getting out and it's so great. And I feel like it came after this last video on shop efficiency. It's like something just triggered it and YouTube finally started showing my video out to the masses instead of, it's really difficult, right? To get into that algorithm and get the video, shown and recommended to different people. It's very difficult. So I am super excited. And so it kind of made me think that I need to keep this topic going because I think a lot of people want to know about it. So this is why I made this follow-up video, and I'm going to make more as we go on. So stick with me. I appreciate it, and just grow with my channel. I think it's great. I love to see people that have been here since the very beginning comment and regularly support the channel, which is really cool. And I think it's great. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you later.